All right. Welcome back, Jerry. Everyone is right behind me. We just adjourned, closed. Thank you everyone for waiting.
Mayor, could you give me 1 second just to get in touch with Mr. Waltz?
Yep, no worries. And we also need to bring Ms. Sworn over as well. I think she's on the phone. There's Candace. All right. Chief Alvarez. Captain Cassiello.
Just going right now into regular.
All right, no worries.
Yep. Okay. All right, bye.
All right. And then Bailey, if you see Ms. Sworns, you can bring her over as well. I think she might be on her phone. I think she's commuting tonight. So.
Yeah, she's reached out. The link for some reason for the panelist invite didn't work for her. So she's going to be joining as an attendee shortly, and I'm going to convert her over.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you for that. All right. Well, Mr. Lucas here. Okay. And okay, right. All right. Pursuant. Actually, before I get started, let's go ahead and salute the American flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the
republic
for which it
stands, a nation
under God,
God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975. This is the state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2021, the news record, and Star Ledger in December of 2020, and by filing said notice in the office of the township clerk.
Ms. Adams? Here. Mr. Daffis?
Here.
Mr. DeLuca?
Here.
Lembrick?
Here.
Mayor McGehee?
Here.
Whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires that all meetings of public bodies be open to the public. And whereas Section 7A provides that the governing body has a discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public at any meeting. And whereas desire the governing body to comply with the provision of this act, same time to conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner. Now therefore be resolved by the Township Committee, the Township Maplewood does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in deliberations of the governing body by the public, and except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observation of the actions and discussions of the governing body at all its regular and special meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Luca?
Yes.
Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor McGehee?
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fritzen, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to the December 7th, 2021 Township Committee meeting. I will briefly run through the agenda because we have a few things that are very robust and toward the front end. First, we'll have our boards and committees appointment, which will be to Larry Tomlin to Open Space Trust Fund. Then we'll have our resident spotlight. We traditionally do employee spotlights, and we'll have one in 2 weeks, but we're doing a resident spotlight this evening to Christina Swarns. From there, we will go on to the oath of office for Chief Alvarez and for Captain Cassiello. Then from there, we'll have public comment on agenda items only, limited 3 minutes. Our next part of the agenda is a public hearing on Esses County Community Block Grant Program. This is an annual thing that we do, and this will be led by Ms. Annette DePalma. From there, we'll move into our Board of Health meeting, led by our Board of Health Chair, Mr. Daffis, as well as our Health Officer, Candace Davenport. Tonight, we have one ordinance on final. This is related to various capital improvements. And then we have 4 ordinances on introduction, including a zoning review, an amendment of our code of the Township Committee related to cannabis, also our code related to vehicles and traffic, and then the installation of a multi-stop sign at Rutgers and Field Road and Newark Way. For there, we'll hear reports from our departments, and then we'll hear from our administrative team, which includes Mr. Gimes, our Township Administrator, Mr. Desiderio, Township Clerk, and Ms. Fritzen, our Township Clerk, and Mr. Desiderio, Township Attorney. Then from there, we'll have reports from elected officials. We'll hear first from Ms. Adams. Then we'll hear from Mr. DeLuca, Mr. Limbrick, Deputy Mayor Daffis, and then myself. Discussion items. We have two this evening. We have one regarding Soma 2 Towns for all ages, 22 and beyond. That'll be led by Mr. Daffis. And then our second discussion item is regarding our vaccination policy at township venues, also led by Mr. Daffis. Our consent agenda has several items on it, including but not limited to change orders, contract awarding, authorizations, and closing our municipal aid program. From there, we will conclude and move on to the approval of our regular meetings minutes, as well as our closed minutes, public comment on any subject matter, and then we will adjourn. So with that, I will yield the floor now to Mr. Daffis, just for boards and committees. Mr. Daffis.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm delighted to introduce Ms. Tomlin this evening, who's interested in being appointed to our Open Space Trust Fund. She is already, she's a long-time resident of our community and already very heavily invested in our community, as well as a pretty awesome tennis player. I know so from personal experience. So Ms. Tomlin, I invite you to introduce yourself to the public this evening. Tell us a little bit about yourself and about your interest in being appointed to the Open Space Trust Fund.
Okay, hi everybody. Yeah, I'm Laura Tomlin, and I'm a local artist and illustrator, and I've lived in Maplewood with my husband for about 16 years now. In the past, I have been on the Recreation Advisory Committee, I think, with Greg, for about, I don't know, like 3 or 4 years. And currently I'm on the board for the Memorial Park Conservancy, and I'm out there every Wednesday. So if you want to come out and volunteer tomorrow, we will be there. Anyway, obviously as a citizen, I have a real interest in the green spaces here in Maplewood, and I'm in the park virtually every day, either just walking around and doing some bird watching or playing tennis. And I have an interest in how the green spaces of Maplewood are used, and how they can be, they've been a real respite for people during the pandemic, and it can, bring to light how much they either need some help as far as what they look like, or how, maybe spaces can be used in different ways than they currently are. So I don't know. I think that the Open Space Trust Fund is a board that I could be a valuable member of.
Thank you, Laura, for your interest and your enthusiasm and your energy. I move the appointment of Ms. Tomlin onto the Open Space Trust Fund Committee.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
No, just my experience with Laura on the Memorial Park Conservancy. That whole group works really hard, as I've said before at these meetings, and I'm happy to support you on the OSTF. So thank you.
Thank you. And if anybody wants to, I have to plug it. We're gonna have the Christmas bird count in Memorial Park on the 18th, 8 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. If anybody wants to come count birds with us.
That's great.
Mr. Mayor, I'll just add that, Laura was one of my favorite members of the Recreation Advisory Committee and was a really dedicated member for, like she said, it was, at least 4 years. And, we were very sorry to lose her, but I think she'll be excellent on the Open Space Trust Fund. She, knows our parks and our public spaces as well as anyone in town, and literally is not shy about getting her hands dirty to make our parks better. So I think that she will be outstanding. There's no one I would trust more to advise the township on matters of open space and how we should spend our resources. So I'll be very pleased to support her tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Limbrick.
Thank you very much, Greg.
Thank you. All right. Hearing no more discussion, Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Limbrick?
Yes.
Mayor McGehee?
Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And I'm gonna just leave the meeting now, if that's okay.
We understand. You're not the
Thank
first.
you.
So have fun. Have a good time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
See you later. All right. Before we get started to our next agenda item, I just want to take a second and pause. And one thing that I want to communicate is that earlier this past week that we lost a pillar in our community in Charlie Ziegler. And I think it's most fitting that I yield the floor to Ms. Fritzen, who knew Charlie very well and is also a dear friend, to just say a few words about Mr. Ziegler and then a moment of silence. Ms. Fritzen.
Thank you, Mayor. I met Charlie Ziegler the first day I walked across the bridge into the Civic House, starting my employment with the Township of Maplewood. And he and I worked together as he was the Assistant Director of Recreation for 31 years for the Township. And he was a wonderful person, so well known in the town. He went on after retirement from the rec department to become a jitney bus driver. So many other people within our community knew Charlie. He did that for several years. He also, some of you may not even know this, was part of my election night for probably over 25 years. And he was the guy, behind the door who was taking tallies off of the voting receipts that we received, but he always wanted to be involved. He was a coach in town. He coached many parents of children that are currently playing sports. He ran all the softball leagues, basketball leagues, and Charlie was a lifelong Maplewood resident, graduate of Columbia High School, and he loved his town of Maplewood. So thank you, Mayor, for letting me speak about my dear friend of 42 years, I might say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. Let's now have a moment of silence for Mr. Ziegler. Thank you. We will now move on in our agenda, and we will now have our resident spotlight. And I see that Ms. Swarns has joined us, and it's great to see you. And thank you for joining us. I know you're always extremely busy. And I have the honor of reading this proclamation in really recognition and appreciation again for your work. And we're very proud to know that we can call you a Maplewoodian. So with that, I will read this proclamation of recognition and appreciation. Whereas Christina Swarns is the executive director of the Innocence Project, the leading nonprofit for criminal justice reform. The Innocence Project is committed to exonerating individuals who have been wrongly convicted through the use of DNA testing and working to reform the criminal justice system to prevent further injustice. Whereas Christina is also a nationally recognized expert on issues of race and criminal justice. She served as the attorney in charge of the Office of Appellate Defender and as a litigation director of the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund, where she represented Dwayne Black, a Black man who was sentenced to death in Texas based explicitly on racist evidence. In addition, she served as lead counsel arguing Buck versus Davis in the United States Supreme Court. The court's 6-2 ruling in Buck's favor was monumental, not only because it vacated his sentence, but also because it explicitly condemned racial bias in the administration of criminal justice. And whereas Chief Justice John Roberts, writing for the majority, said, "Our law punishes people for what they do, not who they are." Punishment on this basis is a characteristic flatly and guiding principle. And whereas in November of 2021, Christina and her team at the Innocence Project literally changed history. The two men wrongly imprisoned for the murder of Malcolm X have been exonerated. A judge cleared Muhammad A. Azul and Khalil Islam, two of the three men convicted of the killing in 1966, after a 22-month investigation led by Manhattan District Attorney Cyrus Vance Jr. and lawyers from the Innocent Project. Last month's ruling officially acknowledged what many investigators and historians have long known or suspected, that these two gentlemen were innocent all along. And whereas Christina has also given back to her local community of Maplewood, on Juneteenth 2020, Christina participated as a panelist in our Awareness to Action Forum on law enforcement accountability, mass incarceration in America, and the treatment of Black people in our community. And whereas we, the Township Committee, wish to extend our utmost appreciation for her extraordinary services in working to reform the criminal justice system, and while also serving as an incredible role model for her significant contributions to create more just society at the cost of great personal risk and sacrifice. Now therefore be resolved, I, Frank McGehee, Mayor of the Township Committee, on behalf of the Township Committee, recognize and appreciate the service of our Maplewood resident, Christina Swarns. Congratulations, Christina.
Thank you so very much. I can't express how honored I am to receive this recognition, especially from my hometown. You know, I moved to Maplewood because I knew it was a place that would celebrate the work that I do, and that my neighbors would be proud of the work that I do. And tonight's recognition just makes that makes clear that I was right when I made that call. So I want to thank you so much for this recognition. I appreciate so much the township's support for the work of criminal justice reform, which is of course ongoing. And I want to thank you, Mayor, in particular, for your support and your ongoing support for the work of criminal justice reform in this community and elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. All right. And with that, I know you're busy. I can see a classroom, so we'll let you go on about your thing and enjoy the rest of your evening. All right. So we'll now move on in our agenda. And I think this is probably going to be an exciting part of it. We're going to do a couple of appointments. And with that, I will yield the floor to Ms. Fritzen.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll be starting off with the resolution and followed with an oath of office for our new chief of the Maplewood Fire Department. Then that will follow with the resolution and oath of office for our new captain in the Maplewood Fire Department. So it gives me a great deal of pleasure to first read Resolution 352-21 in full. It's a resolution appointing Captain Joseph Alvarez to Chief of the Maplewood Fire Department. Whereas the position of Chief in the Fire Department of Maplewood has become vacant, and whereas the Township Committee of the Township of Maplewood has determined the need to fill the position of Chief in the Fire Department, and whereas it has been determined that Captain Joseph Alvarez is qualified for the position, now therefore be resolved by the Township Committee, Township of Maplewood, County of Essex, State of New Jersey, that Captain Joseph Alvarez be and is hereby appointed to the position of Chief of the Fire Department of the Township of Maplewood, effective December 7, 2021.
Ms. Fritzen, do we need a motion?
Yes, please.
All right, I would like to move adoption of resolution number 352-21, appointing Captain Alvarez as Chief of the Maplewood Fire Department.
Second.
Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor McGehee?
Yes, and congratulations, Chief.
Chief, we're going to have an oath of office, please. So this may look a little familiar since we had a ceremonial oath last night. I have the Bible here.
I see
So please raise your right hand and please repeat after me.
Okay.
After I say aye, please insert your name. I
I, Joseph Alvarez,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will
that I will
support the Constitution
support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will bear
and that I will bear
true faith
true faith
and allegiance
and allegiance
to the same
to the same
and to the governments
and to the governments
established in the United States
established in the United States
and this state
and in this state
under the authority of the people,
under the authority of the people,
that I will faithfully, impartially,
impartially,
and justly
and justly
perform all the duties
perform all the duties
of the office of
Chief
Chief of the Maplewood Fire Department,
of the Maplewood Fire Department,
effective December 7th, 2021.
effective December 7th, 2021.
Congratulations, Chief.
Thank you very much. If I may just say a couple words,
Please.
I would first like to thank my family for putting up with me and my job and what I do on a daily basis. They're very strong. My two sons, my daughter, and my wife. So I want to reach out and say thank you to them for their continued support. I'd also like to thank the Township Committee. Thank all of you for giving me this opportunity and putting your faith and trust in me to protect the residents of Maplewood. I'd like to also thank Committeeman Lemberek for his service in the township. Mr. Lemberek, you've done a great job for us. Thank you, sir. I would also like to thank the members of the Maplewood Fire Department. They're second to none. And it's a family like no other. So I want to thank the members. I'd also like to thank South Orange, Irvington, Newark, Union, West Orange, the towns that border us, for their continued support, helping us as well as us helping them. And I look forward to working with all of them as the new fire chief. Again, thank you all for all your support. And I'd also like to congratulate Captain Cassiello in his promotion this evening. Everybody, thank you so much for this. And I promise I won't let you down.
Thank you, Chief. And we'll see you tomorrow night.
Yeah, he'll be in the hot seat in 23 and a half hours.
That's right.
First public safety meeting.
That's why I took the glove off. I took the glove off because I need to wipe my forehead now.
Yeah.
Chief, thank you. Ms. Fritzen, we'll now yield the floor back to you.
Thank you, Mayor. So next, it gives me a great deal of pleasure to read in full resolution number 353-21, which will be appointing firefighter EMT to captain in the Maplewood Fire Department. A resolution appointing firefighter EMT Stephen Cassiello to captain of the Maplewood Fire Department. Whereas the position of captain in the fire department of the Township of Maplewood has become vacant. Whereas the Township Committee of the Township of Maplewood has determined the need to fill the position of captain in the fire department. And whereas it has been determined that firefighter EMT Stephen Cassiello is qualified for the position. Firefighter EMT Stephen Cassiello be and is hereby appointed to the position of Captain of the Fire Department in the Township of Maplewood, effective December 7th, 2021.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move adoption of resolution number 353-21, appointing firefighter Stephen Cassiello to the position of captain of the Maplewood Fire Department.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGehee.
Yes, congratulations, Captain.
Captain, now we're gonna have the swearing in again. It's kind of be familiar to you as we did a ceremonial swearing in last evening. Here is the Bible. Please raise your right hand. Repeat after me. And after I say I, please insert your name. I
I, Stephen Cassiello,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will
that I will
support the Constitution
support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of the State of New Jersey,
of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will bear
and that I will bear
true faith and allegiance
true faith and allegiance
to the same
to the same
and to the governments
and to the governments
established in the United States
established in the United States
and in this state,
and in this state,
and under the authority
and under the authority
of the people,
of the people,
that I will faithfully,
faithfully,
impartially,
impartially,
and justly perform all the duties
perform all the duties
of the office of
Captain
of the Maplewood Fire Department,
of the Maplewood Fire Department,
effective December 7th, 2021.
effective December 7th, 2021.
Congratulations, Captain.
Just want to say thank you very much. Thank you to the mayor, to the township committee, to the business administrator, assistant business administrator. I appreciate the faith and the confidence that you have in me as a captain. I just want to say congratulations to Chief Alvarez. He's been a longtime mentor of me, and I couldn't be happier to share this day with him. This is a huge opportunity for me to serve not only the residents of Maplewood, but my fellow firefighters. And I'd just like to thank you all for this chance.
Thank you, Captain Cassiello. We appreciate you. Congratulations. And we will see you very soon. You're not going to be on the hot seat, though. Don't worry. Thank you both. Well deserved, and we look forward to seeing you in the years to come.
Thank you very much, guys. It's okay to log out, right?
Yes. Have a good night, and thank you again.
You guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. We'll now move on in our agenda. We're at our first public comment. Agenda items only, limited to 3 minutes. I will yield the floor to, I guess, to Ms. Barnett, I believe, or maybe to Mr. Waltz, but whoever, the floor is yours for the first public comments.
Yes, so Zoom isn't allowing Nick to speak, so I will be handling public comment. If anyone in the audience would like to speak, please raise your hand. We'll convert you to a panelist for 3 minutes. And first up, we have John T. Sullivan.
Good evening, members of the Township Committee. I'm just reaching out to thank you all for introducing Resolution 3050. The residents of the Hilton neighborhood and the Lightning Brook section of the Hilton neighborhood have been very concerned about the speeding vehicles, cars this disregarding traffic signals. So the adding of the four-way stop sign at the corner of Field, Rutgers, and York Way. You've listened to us and you've acted on it. So we thank you. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan.
Okay, next up we have Heather Soslovsky. We'll convert you to a panelist and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. I'm here for the same reason as Mr. Sullivan. I also live nearby where that stop sign will be added, and I agree with John. We're greatly appreciative that this is on the agenda. It is extremely important. That is a very, very dangerous intersection there. As you know, there was a serious accident there not long ago, and there are near misses daily. I would ask that you also consider adding the flashing lights to those stop signs. The current two-way stop signs are constantly run. And so I feel like while you're adding additional signage, whatever you can do to add more signage on the Newark Way end of things might be helpful as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sullivan.
So Mayor, just for the record, we are going to be having illuminated stop signs.
Right.
They take a while to order. So what we've decided is to put the stop signs up now, and then we'll replace them with the illuminated stop signs when they come in.
That's right. You talked about that in Engineering, Public Works, and Planning meeting, which is spot on. So there's an inventory shortage somewhere, everywhere. Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. Ms. Bailey.
I see no more hands, Mayor.
Thank you. All right, we'll now move on to agenda item number 10, which is our public hearing on Esses County Community Block Grant Program. I'll yield the floor to Mr. Palmer. You're still on mute, Mr. Palmer. Okay.
Yeah, she's unmuted, but we still can't hear her. I don't know what's going on with the Zoom tonight.
I think there's an audio issue, yeah.
Listen, I'd like to get the last half hour back of my life, quite frankly.
Well, let's give a little context. Let's give a little context for Mr. Palmer. This is an annual grant that we apply for. It really helps us do a lot of work in our community, our ADA, sidewalks, for example. Mr. Palmer, you can shake yes or no if I get it right or wrong. And and it's really important that we go through this process. It's recognized and it helps solidify the funding that we get. And you go around our community, you've seen a lot of the ADA bumpers and sidewalk curbs that we've been able to put in because of this funding. And I do know that we're looking to do some work in 2022, actually in Memorial Park. It's been earmarked at the state level as something that is of great interest because of the amount of traffic there and the need for it in terms of events and so forth. So hopefully I haven't missed anything here, but really what we're going to do is, and Ms. Barnett, I don't know if you can take a screenshot of everyone who's here like we did in 2020, but we want to take a screenshot of all the attendees and panelists as we can't do what we traditionally do, which is when we're in town hall, we go around with a clipboard to recognize that we've had this narrative in a public forum, which is part of the qualification. But I want to personally thank Mr. Palmer as she's working her audio for her efforts and her consistent efforts in making sure that we're always there to get this important funding, which we frankly don't have in our budget, to get these things done, which are part of traffic calming, pedestrian safety, and also access for all residents in our community. So thank you, Mr. Palmer.
Mayor, if I may just as is set forth in the agenda, the purpose is, this is the recommendation of the engineering department, correct, Mr. Palmer? And the building department? The recommendation to construct barrier-free access at the Township's Department of Public Works building renovating the perimeter sidewalk around Maplewood, Maple Crest Park and other barrier fee improvements within the township. Is that correct, Mr. Palmer? Nod your head, yes. I guess it is. But this is the first of 2 hearings, Mayor.
That is
Okay?
correct.
There'll be a second hearing at the second meeting in December, and hopefully we'll do that. And if anyone has any other proposed projects, they may submit those to Mr. Palmer, okay, for consideration as well.
And that is correct, but there's one clarification, and this because I spoke with Mr. Palmer earlier this morning. It's going to be not Maple Crest Park, but Memorial Park. That's the only clarification.
Okay.
Yeah. So I believe she's leveraging her phone to say a few words. So we'll just give her a minute. I hope. Miss Burnett, in the interim, has you have an opportunity to take a picture of a screenshot? Okay, thank you. Because we have 30 people here. We have more, obviously, but still, that's a significant amount. Thank you. Okay. Mr. Palmer, are you comfortable with us moving on at this point? If you can shake your head yes or no, then we'll know. Move on. Okay. Well, thank you anyway, and we'll definitely correct the issue on the 21st. We're now going to move on to agenda item number 11, which is our Board of Health meeting. I will yield the floor to Mr. Daffis.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll read the opening statement pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of New Jersey. This is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2021 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December 2020, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk. Ms. Fritzen.
Ms. Adams?
Here.
Mr. DeLuca?
Here.
Mr. Lembrick?
Here.
Mayor McGehee?
Here.
Mr. Daffis?
Here.
Whereas Chapter 231 Public Laws of 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires that all meetings of public bodies be open to the public. And whereas Section 7A provides that the Board of Health has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public at any meeting, and whereas desire this Maplewood Board of Health to comply with the provision of this act, same time to conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner, now therefore be resolved by the Maplewood Board of Health, Township of Maplewood, does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in the deliberations of the Board of Health by the public, and except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observations of the actions and discussions of the Board of Health at all of its regular and special meetings.
So moved.
So moved.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor McGehee?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We move on to the approval of the minutes from our November 3rd Board of Health. I move that we approve the minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Adams?
Sorry. Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor McGehee?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. Health Officer Davenport, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to share my screen here. And away we go. Okay. So we're going to start off with our COVID nursing update. As of now, we have 1,984 cases. That's as of 12/2. Our cases for the month of November are 90. So our numbers are going up quite a bit. You can see the tally at the bottom there below. As for those who've traveling, during the holidays, we wanted to always bring this up. but we are seeing a number of cases that have traveled. Most of them are breakthrough vaccinated cases. So we are seeing breakthrough cases. This is the age distribution. Just want to point out that you can see that ages 20 to 29 and 30 to 39 make up a large portion of our age distribution. Interestingly enough, we have vaccinations for 5 to 11-year-olds, but this is also the same age group that are also parents to young children who make up that 16%. So it's really interesting to see that perhaps there are some breakthrough cases in that age group of adults who are taking care of children who are getting exposed and who are unable to get vaccinated at this time. So really interesting dynamics are happening here. This is also very interesting. So I want to bring your attention to last month when we presented on October 23rd. We were in a very moderate situation across the state. As of the week ending November 27th, however, you can see that a majority or almost over half of our state is covered in what is now a high transmission level. Given our increasing numbers across the state, we do foresee that this is a trend that's going to expand to Essex County as well, and we'll move to high transmission. So just wanted to give you guys a heads up, and we'll definitely keep you updated at the health department. These are our numbers on the left side, as you can see here. For those of us in the community who are 5 and up, so that accounts for 23,591 Maplewood residents, 80% of us are fully vaccinated, with 15% getting their first dose. These are numbers as of December 3rd, I believe, 2021. So our potential total for our herd immunity in Maplewood is 95%. If you break it down by age group, 12 and up, 18 and up, 65 and up, and 80 and up, you can see that our numbers are very robust and help to contribute to our safety and herd immunity. The state health department's COVID dashboard is actually able to break down the age groups between 12 and 17. So these are the junior high school age kids. So in Maplewood, 87% of our kids 12 to 17 are vaccinated. However, our target, and that has been increasing steadily. Our vaccination target used to be last month 16% unvaccinated, and now it's down to 13. So keep it going, 12 to 17-year-olds, go and get vaccinated. And just to give you a larger context, Essex County, all ages are 75%. So we are steadily going up in Essex County and not losing momentum. So that's a really good thing. Here's what everyone's interested in, and that's the Omicron variant. You hear a lot about it in the news. It started in South Africa, as you know. What we do know as of now is that it seems to spread faster than Delta variant, which would explain a lot of the international cases that we're seeing. As you know, any of our breakthrough cases, the labs send out for sequencing to see what variant might have caused that breakthrough case. So we will see in the next few weeks or so if Omicron starts to dominate the variants that are spreading across New Jersey. What they're able to know also is that the vaccine does work. The more people get vaccinated, the less there is a chance that a variant can mutate in a community, and that the vaccine, is effective against severe illness, hospitalization, and death. Even if people get Omicron variant and come down with COVID, even if they're vaccinated, they are mild cases for the most part, as we've observed so far. So just want to highlight that Essex County has vaccination and testing locations at the 3 locations still: Essex County College in Newark, Kmart in West Orange, and the Sears building in the Livingston Mall in Livingston. They have hours that are different. For 12 and older, you can go Monday through Saturday at 9 to 4. And from ages 5 to 11, it's Monday to Friday after school to make it easier for caregivers from 4 to 7. And on Saturdays at 9 to 5 p.m. at all locations. They also have mobile vaccination testing sites. This is also found on essexcovid.org, which you can find there as well. That makes it easier for people to schedule a testing. Also, I want to do a shout out to our school district that has now added a date. They've been seeing a lot of testing and really doing a robust testing. I think they see over 250 people a week because they now have testing available on Saturdays from 9 to 3 and Wednesdays from 4 to 6. This is open to all. If you have insurance, you would bring your insurance card. If you don't have insurance, that would be covered by the federal government for testing. It's now not on the outside, but I just want to make sure that everyone knows it's at 525 Academy Street at the Board of Education office for both times. And it's open to all Essex County residents. So thank you for that. Testing is really important. And as we move forward, I just want to bring a highlight to, as I mentioned, or as Anna, my public health nurse, mentioned last month, that the state health insurance enrollment period is open, but only open until December 31st. So please, if you don't have insurance, now would be a good time to log on to getcovered.nj.gov. It is the New Jersey's official health insurance marketplace. And I did put out an article today in our local media, just encouraging people to get insurance. Those who get insured and have health insurance are more likely to utilize a healthcare provider for preventative services like annual screenings, vaccinations, and screenings for diabetes, heart disease, and cancer, which all of these are life-saving. So we want to make this an opportunity for people to get to those services as easy as possible and have healthcare access. And what you may not know is that 9 in 10 people qualify for financial help. So if you need help, there's njhelps.org. They provide assistance on signing up for health insurance. And then, of course, if you have a family with young children, you can also go onto NewJerseyFamilyCare.org. That also connects you to health insurance for families. Lastly, I just want to mention that we received these little cards. This is the back and the front of the cards for mental health awareness that we're giving to our first responders, like our police and fire department and our health department, to give out to people should they come in contact with someone with a mental health issue or circumstance. We want to emphasize these hotlines and have people use them as much as possible, especially during the holidays when times can be hard. Just wanted to let everybody know that as we move into the new year, we are going to be adding a crisis intervention social worker to the health department. So we are expanding our resources and our services to be more holistic, more encompassing. We already do social services in some context and capacity, and this will just assist us and assist our first responders as well. So the health department is growing, and we're happy about that. Just to give you some context from the Trust for America's Health in 2020, the United States spends about $3.6 trillion on health and healthcare in America, but less than 3% of that is spent on public health and prevention. So I want to thank the Township Committee and our community for really supporting and rallying around public health at this time as we are moving into almost 2 years of the pandemic. And I want to say a thank you. This is my last Board of Health meeting with Mr. Lembrick. So I just want to say a big thank you for your service, Mr. Lembrick, to us in the community as a Maplewood resident. Just want to make a shout out that it takes a lot. What you guys do is amazing. The amount of hours and time and service and dedication and research that you guys do every day to assist us is incredible. So thank you for being there. And that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Davenport. As always, you provide a very fulsome presentation and report, and we want to thank you for your continued leadership as it relates to getting us through the pandemic, and also on a bigger scale, recognizing how expansive health and wellness is. We're excited to see the department grow and to further expand health and wellness in our community at every layer of life. So thank you for that. With that, I ask my colleagues if they have any questions they'd like to ask Health Officer Davenport from the presentation thus far. Any questions?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Lembrick.
Thank you. This isn't so much a question, but I just wanted to thank Health Officer Davenport I have in turn really enjoyed working with you, and say, that, certainly, when we appointed you to this position and when you agreed to take this position, none of us could have foreseen, what the world was going to have in store for us. And, the fact that, a whole lot of terms like, social distancing and the CDC and, transmission rates and things like that, most of us didn't really think about in our day-to-day lives were going to become, such regular parts of our vocabulary. But I have to say, over these past 20 plus months, you and your staff have been such a source of facts and information, and therefore comfort to our community overall, and particularly to us as public officials, as we've had to make decisions and set policies. And some of the questions that we've had to answer have been difficult. And I have to say that I don't think I'm speaking out of turn for my colleagues to say that we would have been completely lost at sea without you and your expertise and your guidance, over this time. And, I really don't think our community would have made it, through these challenges and risen up to these challenges of this pandemic without you and your team. And it's, it's really been a pleasure to serve with you and to work with you. And I'm very pleased to report that, I no longer have to ask you when we're going to get approvals for the kids. Since I last asked you that question, I'm pleased to report that my daughter is fully vaccinated. My wife and I have both had our boosters. We've all had our flu shots. So, my family is fully protected. I encourage everyone else, if your family is not yet fully protected and you're eligible, go out there, get your shots, get your boosters, get your kids vaccinated. And, I love hearing from my daughter who's in 5th grade, how much, well, usually I don't like to hear about peer pressure among 5th graders. I've loved hearing about how, it's the cool thing for kids to be vaccinated, and how kids have been bragging about how, they got vaccinated first, they got vaccinated the first day or the first week, and, they already have their second shot. And, other kids have been jealous and have actually been going home to their parents saying, sign me up, when am I going to get vaccinated? And I think that, the way that our community has embraced vaccination and really taken a proactive approach to fighting this pandemic is a tribute not only to the level of education and engagement of our community, but to the education and the information that you and your team have brought to our community. So thank you very much. And Mr. Daffis, that's all I have.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Warren. Any other questions or remarks from my colleagues? Seeing none, I open it up to the public. Ms. Barnett, are there any questions from the public?
Seeing no hands.
No hands. So we are going to move on to the next topic. Thank you, Ms. Barnett. In our Board of Health presentation agenda tonight, I believe Health Officer Davenport may have some remarks and or guidance as it relates to our discussion item this evening, our second discussion item, our vaccination policy, proposed vaccination policy in our township venues at township sponsored events.
Right. So thank you so much for that, Mr. Daffis. So yes, it is on discussion item number 16, but I did want to mention that as your health officer, if you're looking toward consideration of requiring vaccination, proof of vaccination or proof of testing 72 hours prior to attending any entertainment venue or event at township buildings, I would definitely say that our numbers are going up, and it would be something that would be strongly considered and modeled already in places that are doing private large-scale venues. But of course, their venues are private and their organizations are private. These are public events or private events happening in public using public venue buildings. So it would be a good to do that as our numbers are going higher. We have people who are coming in to watch our shows that are not necessarily Maplewood people. They're coming from all over and their vaccination status is unknown. It is just a matter of whether we have the resources and manpower to be able to do that. And I believe Roger, Mr. Desiderio can say if there's any issues with regulations or laws to be able to do this, or our administrator can chime in here. But as your health officer, anything that we can do to be conservative or prudent to ensure the safety of our patrons, our staff, and performers, I would always advocate to be on the side of conservative caution with anything. All of these strategies do not eliminate or mean zero risk. I want to say that very clearly. Like all of these things that we do, the more mitigation strategies we put in, we are just trying to lower the risk while trying to move forward with safety and normalcy. So that's really the intention of trying to do these things. We're not trying to like exclude people or ban people from coming, but we just want to make sure that when people want to enjoy a show, they can feel that they're doing so safely. And as we're going indoors more, while we're still wearing masks in all township buildings, it may not be feasible in January, February to leave those doors open at the Woodland. It's not, we've done that in the fall. It's just getting colder. And I don't know if that's the way we need to go. I would always advocate for more ventilation that helps to decrease risk, but I don't know in the winter months if that's something feasible. So thank you for considering requiring proof of vaccination and proof of testing to attend entertainment venues at our township buildings.
Thank you, Ms. Davenport. Do we want to have this discussion now or wait until our agenda later in the meeting? Township Committee.
Yep. At this point, I'm open to doing it if alone there's no point of order for Mr. Desiderio, because we do have.
No, not at all, Mayor.
None? You're
No,
good?
not at all.
Okay. Thank you.
I think it's on the tee. We may as well kick it now.
Agreed. Okay. Let's continue this narrative then.
So, Mr. Desiderio, do you have any legal opinion about this? I know you were going to.
I think I wrote an email with regard to this, and I said I couldn't find it. First off, the State Board of Health was useless in giving us any assistance. Very unfortunate, quite frankly. But we have to have a rational basis. And I think I wrote that I think we really need a much more detailed analysis from Ms. Davenport if it's going to be her recommendation to do this, because I think your decision as to whether to do it or not has to be based upon her recommendation. That is the rational basis upon which to do it. She's the expert. And if she doesn't feel that she is the one who do it, that we should have an expert who should give us the authority to do this. Because it may very well get challenged. And if, listen, I'm obviously going to be, as she is conservative on the health end, I'm going to be conservative on the legal end. And that is that we should have something to support this decision, especially in light of the fact that the state is not imposing this. So the state health office is not the one who's dictating that this is what should be done. So I think it would be prudent on our part to have something detailed in writing from a health professional before you make any determination on how to proceed. That's my recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Desiderio. That's good insight. Yes, definitely get something in writing in terms of a policy, but you find in your legal opinion that what was expressed this evening from Health Officer Davenport would provide sufficient rational basis?
I don't want to put Ms. Davenport on the hot seat, but no, I do not. I think she's saying, I think it's a good recommendation. I think it would be a good idea, but I don't think I think it has to be much stronger than that, if that's her position. That I recommend doing this for these reasons, X, Y, and Z, et cetera. I think that's the way we should proceed if you're going to proceed in that direction.
Thank you, Mr.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
And I'm not trying to put any words in her mouth. Because I don't know that she does feel that way, okay? I mean, that's the balance that she has to make with regard to this.
Mayor?
I'll yield the floor to Ms. Davenport to answer, if she wants to answer Mr. Desiderio's question first.
No, I mean, I know where Mr. Desiderio is coming from. The state has not said anything. State Health Department has not determined, forthright to go forward with this. I asked the county and I'm still waiting to see what they would do. It would be more helpful to say that, the thing is that these are public township buildings, but we're hosting events that people are paying to come to, right? This is not like you're doing this to attend a township meeting or to, go to a public event like a ceremony. This isn't the case. This is for entertainment venues when we have them at the Woodland and the Bergdorf. So just to reference other places which are private, like Paper Mill Playhouse, they already enact that you have to show proof of vaccination or proof of testing. So that's the only thing that I can reference. I believe SOPAC would have done the same thing if they were still open. So these are my only two references in this area, but they are private entities. So again, these are, private people who are renting it to do a show. It just so happens to be in a public venue. It's, again, not that they pay for. It's not about attending a township event, which are free and open to all. So
what if we were to say or write down that we recommend this in order to mitigate further transmission, especially in light of a new international variant that may be even more transmittable? Is that not rational basis?
If the health officer concludes it, it very well could be. And I think SOPAC is open, by the way.
Okay.
Do we have an idea of the number, and this is probably a question, if Mr. Johns can answer, definitely Ms. Mancuso, the number of events that we have planned in the next 24 days into the year that would align with any type of action that we took?
I don't have the exact number, but based on an email from the director received later in the day today, DeHart, for example, the Woodland and the Bergdorf have bookings every weekend, multiple rooms. So it would be, the number off the top of my head, I don't know, but it's fairly significant. As you know, we have busy organizations.
Thank you, Mr. Johns. And then also, I know, Ms. Davenport, thank you for your narrative, your initial narrative. It was very robust and appreciate it as always. You did talk about the drawback of enforcement. We are a very lean, mean administration across our departments, and it could be challenging. You did mention Paper Mill House, and but also you mentioned that obviously the spread currently is a breakthrough case and non-breakthrough case. And you're seeing our numbers go up and up as a postmortem to, I think, Thanksgiving. I guess the question that we need to ask ourselves is time. Do we, if we were to not make a decision now and maybe defer for a couple of weeks, would that change what we would decide to do? And also, to Mr. Desiderio's point, give Ms. Davenport and her team go back and talk to other people about it as well. So I think we have to figure out these attributes as well.
Well, yeah, go ahead, Ms. Davenport.
Yeah, I would agree. You have time, right? I think this was a question that was spurred on from the Senior Advisory Committee. And then, it was thought of, well, let's look at it for all, right? When we attend all these events. You do have time, but just wanted the email and the narrative that I just provided to you is really just to say, look at what's coming down the pike. So yes, we have a lot of events coming up. But yes, we are not out of the pandemic yet. And yes, we have an increasing variant that is showing breakthrough cases. So we may not even be able to, I hope this doesn't happen. So I hope, I don't even want to say it, but we may not even be able to have these things, or maybe we have to start reducing capacity. That will come down from the state, whether they start to say, reduce capacity now. Right now, there's no reduction in capacity. People can do what they want. Just saying that if we're going forward, we should still mask, we should still social distance, and increase ventilation as much as possible and have hand washing in those areas. As we keep moving forward, I just want to say like ventilation, especially in the winter months as we're going indoors, is a huge factor for reducing COVID spread among people. You know, there's thoughts of like, yes, it is droplet, but when you're in tighter spaces in a crowded setting, it does become a little bit aerosolized and hangs in the air a little bit longer. So you do have time to consider this, but just know that we're going into winter.
Right.
And I'll do my best to find out more information. This will be, you know, on the top of my line item as we talk to the state. So happy to continue to have this conversation and keep you guys updated.
Okay, so maybe what we'll do is we will, unless there's another opinion, we should table it until our next Board of Health meeting. I think it's January 5th, right?
January 4th, sir.
January 4th, that's right. I will caution though that we may have time, but you just reported that our numbers are high. You know, we had 90 cases this month. You also reported that we are surrounded by counties that are high risk, not moderate like we are, and therefore not as fully vaccinated as we are, yay us. And to the point of the enforcement piece of this, I just want to remind everybody that we were the same township that was the first to require masking in our parks, the first to require masking in our commercial corridors, way before the state required us to, which was kudos to Mayor McGeehee's leadership. And guess what? We didn't have a lot of enforcement there either. We were leanly staffed. It was difficult. We did what we could. Yes, we had some social distancing ambassadors during the summertime. Our youth stepped up to help us enforce the masking. But, you know, we have to think about doing the right thing as much as we can do, knowing that it's not going to be perfect. So I think this is something we should really strongly consider. It is a narrow policy. We're talking about a vaccination policy at township venues, sponsored at township events, at township venues. So our events, not all public events. And some public events are requiring proof of vaccination, weddings that are happening at the Woodland and so on and so forth. So, you know, those are my final remarks. Are there any other remarks on this before we move on?
Yeah, I guess I don't, at the very least, I think if we're going to table this, it should only be tabled till the next township committee meeting, not wait any longer than that. And I really don't fully understand the hesitancy given the what Mr. Daffis just, you know, laid out and what we've done in the past. I would be in favor of instituting a policy of township events at township venues, just like we require masks at our buildings right now. I guess I don't really see an issue with it. And I think maybe to those private events in those, I think we should even consider private events being more strict with them as if they're in our buildings. Just like you go to a play in New York, you don't get in unless you're vaccinated. You know, you go to, and New York City has really strict vaccination policies over and above what the state does. So I don't necessarily think we need to wait for the state on some of this. I'm not necessarily saying we should institute any such policies for private businesses or private venues like that, but in our public, we own these buildings and they follow our rules on many different ways when they rent those. So I guess I'm not as hesitant as I feel like people are on this. And I would rather be extra cautious and get some blowback than to just keep pushing it down the road. So I'd be in favor of some policy, even if Ms. Davenport, you would draw something up that you might recommend that might be doable. And I agree with Mr. Daffis that it's not necessarily, we're not going to have like guards at the doors necessarily, or put our staff in any kind of uncomfortable position, but just the policy itself is, it's valid. And you got the app on your phone that shows your vaccination status, or, it's not out of the realm of possibility to institute it. And I would be in favor of more caution than less.
Right. So thank you, Ms. Adams. What I will probably say, let me just clarify. I'm only making this recommendation for events that are private, using our township public facilities, that are entertainment venues that people pay for. So this is just for that very short window or small, criterion.
Not somebody's private party.
Right. This wouldn't be for private party. I think I was just kind of segmenting it out for those entertainment venues that people, residents and outsiders would pay for. This is being held by someone, they're just renting our building, right? So we could ask them, if you're going to rent our building, we ask that you have someone at the door checking for vaccination because they're coming into your event. I think that that's reasonable, because I think we have a issue with having township employees. We don't have the staff or resources to do that. So that would be my only hesitation of doing that. But again, it's for that time limited and issue limited framework. And again, referencing, as Ms. Adams said, New York, Broadway does it. Paper Mill Playhouse does it. I believe the SOPAC is also doing it. Again, these are entertainment venues that people actually pay to go to attend.
And the alternative to your point is spacing people out without, if we don't have enough ventilation, then limit the capacity. So
correct. That's another thing to do.
Vaccinated, they don't have to limit the capacity as much. And then mask wearing is a whole nother.
I will say that we don't even have to go to New York. We can go right here to Columbia High School. My daughter was in the play, and when I went to attend it, I had to show proof of vaccination. So we can just look here. So, Mr. Desiderio, just hearing this narrative, I know you, as you mentioned, being conservative on the legal side, if we were to move forward or, with something a little more than waiting for 2 weeks out, and I agree, Ms. Adams, no more than 2 weeks out, could you collaborate with Ms. Davenport just to mitigate any potential risk?
Of course I would do that.
Okay.
Mr. DeLuca, did you want to chime in here?
Yeah, thank you. Because I expressed at the last meeting some concern about how we were going to enforce this and what have you. And a couple of things have changed since then for me. One is I went to a senior luncheon over at the community center. We had 50 people there. And, people are there for over 2 hours without masks, eating, walking around, talking, laughing, singing. Do we really, we're asking seniors to come and participate. Do we really want to give the impression that everything's okay? We ought to make sure of that. And one way of doing that is to do some kind of check on the vaccination. And that's easily done because everyone registers. And you either know it or you don't. Either you prove it or you don't. And if you don't, you can't come. The other thing is I just spent a couple of weeks away on vacation and had to fly. I had to be vaccinated to fly or test. And I'll tell you, if you weren't vaccinated or you weren't testing, you weren't getting on the plane. And depending on where you were going, you were spending long times in line proving that you had to do that. You were either vaccinated or tested. Went to restaurants, had to show vaccinations to get in. Went to events, you had to show vaccinations to get in. So I think we should have a very tailored program here where and talk about very specific buildings. The Woodland, the Bergdorf Center, the Community Center at DeHart, the Senior Building, and 1978. Those are the 5 buildings that we ought to focus on. Those are the 5 buildings that we bring the public in for events, art shows, lunches, artistic events, music, and things like that. And that's what we ought to do. I don't think we should require this for somebody who's having a shower or a wedding, and it's not open to the public. It's their private rental. That's their responsibility. I do think we should continue to make them wear masks. We do that now. But as far as vaccination, if you're having a wedding, we can explain that for the public, we have vaccination, but that's your choice. So I think we should do this. I definitely think we should make a decision in 2 weeks and not wait to January. We should make a decision in 2 weeks and implement this in January. And just one other thing, you know, in the memo we got from the Director of Community Services, there was discussion about the camps and the pool. We're only talking about these 5 buildings, not things outside. We're talking about things inside. And I can tell you, I absolutely agree with Ms. Davenport. As it gets colder, no one is going to want to have those doors open, particularly our seniors. They want it to be warmer in there, not colder. So we're not going to have the ability to have that flow of air that we can have now. And I think this is an alternative. And I've changed my position and fully in favor of doing something.
I just want to add to this. So as Mr. DeLucas made some points, Ms. Adams, you as well, Mr. Davis, we're starting to narrow this policy. So now I look at Mr. Gines, you know, it's been communicated, you know, really narrowing down to the buildings. You know, in terms of individual, you know, in terms of the turnaround of moving forward with the policy as such, what do you think the process is? How quickly can we implement whatever we finalize, I guess, in the next 2 weeks, so that we can effectively move forward with this policy of requiring vaccination?
Well, at the same time, the health officer and the township attorney are, you know, working on crafting a policy as it relates to her recommendation. I'll simultaneously be working with the Director of Community Services to make sure we can implement whatever policy that turns out to be. And I think we can, you know, we will implement it to the best of our ability, and we will be ready, you know, by the time you vote on it at the next Township Committee meeting.
And I just want to ask, Mr. DeLuca mentioned art events. You know, as I mentioned, I was thinking of only paid venues, right? Entertainment ones where you bring in an artist. But what about when you have like art shows that are free, right? But in our township buildings, are you saying you would also apply it there as well?
Yes.
Yep,
Yeah,
got it.
I would apply it to that. I would apply it to the festivals that are coming up, the fairs, all that.
Right. It shouldn't matter if you're paying for it or not.
Correct. It's all going indoors. I just want to make that clarification. Thank you.
Right. Mr. Lembrick, did you want to remark at all? I want to include you and make sure you have the opportunity if you wish.
Yeah, I had some concerns when this first came up, but I think we've addressed them, and I agree that we should move forward with something now, which doesn't mean that what we move forward now can't change. I mean, I think what we've seen is that we have a dynamic and evolving situation. And that, it's not always, steps forward aren't sometimes accompanied by steps back and vice versa. We have, while we've developed, vaccines and seen improvements, we've also seen new variants and new outbreaks. And also, as we've seen evidence of our ability to contain the virus, or that, or that new strains may not be as deadly, we've also seen evidence of breakthrough cases. So I think that we do, have a basis to take action here. And, I agree with what Mr. DeLuca said in terms of what I think the scope of our authority is. Certainly with respect to, public events where we're inviting the public, where we're hosting events in our buildings. I think that we can and should require proof of vaccination. And, where we're allowing our buildings to be used for private events, I think we can continue to require masking. But I'm okay in those events, to not go so far, particularly because it would be difficult for us to enforce it. And I don't know that it's worth us enforcing it for those events where people are making private choices and, and having private events that aren't open to the public to have a broader mandate there. So I think that sort of summarizes where I am, which seems like is pretty consistent with, what seems to be, if not the consensus, then at least the majority here.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Lembrick. We appreciate your insight as well. So there you go. Good discussion. I'm really proud of us. Thank you all. I look forward to moving this forward on the 21st. So I'm going to close our discussion on this topic and move that we adjourn our Board of Health meeting and meet again on the 4th of January.
Second.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGehee,
Yes.
Mr. Daffis.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. Mayor, I turn it over back to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daffis. We'll now move on to agenda item number 12. We have an ordinance on final.
Yes, Mayor, ordinance on final passage. Ordinance number 3046-21, bond ordinance providing for various capital improvements and supplementing appropriations and authorizations for certain purposes in and by the Township of Maplewood in the County of Essex, New Jersey, appropriating $447,700 therefore, and issuing the issuance of $425,315 in bonds or notes of the township to finance part of the cost thereof.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Would anyone like to speak on this ordinance regarding authorization of issuing $425,315 in bonds or notes? Ms. Barnett.
Seeing no hands, Mayor.
Thank you. All right, well then I will actually move this one. I move the ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a pass ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
I second the motion.
Any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGehee.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We're now on to introduction of ordinances. We'll start with our first.
Yes, Mayor, ordinance number 3047-21, amend the fee for zoning review within the Township of Maplewood.
I
May I
move,
get a motion, Mr. DeLuca?
go ahead, Mr. DeLuca.
Should be Mr. Daffis, right?
I think it should be Mr. Daffis. This is his work.
It's Code Committee.
I'm happy to do it. I move the passage of this ordinance on first reading, its publication according to law in the Maplewood South Orange News Record, and a hearing to be held on December 21st, 2021.
I'll second.
Ms. Fritzen,
Second.
please call the roll.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGehee.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We now
May,
have
may,
ordinance.
may I interrupt? Well,
Mr. President.
I already have. I note that we no longer print on the agenda the interpretive statements for these ordinances, and we had in the past. Was that intentional? Because I'll give you the next one, like chapter 257 of the code entitled Vehicles and Traffic. It doesn't tell us anything. The interpretive statement was always included for purposes of letting the public know what the actual ordinance was about. I know we went into a new program, and I'm just wondering if we intentionally dropped that.
What I can answer on that, Mr. Desiderio, is I actually, full disclosure, I have two windows open, so I have all the interpretive statements as well with the agenda. I had to yield to Ms. Fritzen and Mr. Johns about this new platform.
That's just an oversight. I'll work with the staff in the clerk's office to show them where to add that so it appears on the.
You agree it should be there, though? That's really my question. I think it's just helpful for the public to know what the ordinance is about from the interpretive statement. Okay, thank you.
I agree too. I mean, it's just so they don't have to read the whole ordinance if they don't want to either. So
I
even though
concur.
there's a link,
Well,
there.
that's why I have multiple windows open with every ordinance.
Mr. McGee, I have trouble just staying in Zoom, so multiple screens is not going to be helpful to me.
Say no more. We can make that adjustment. Just always staying prepared. And with that, we will have this moved by Mr. DeLuca.
I move the passage of this ordinance on first reading, its publication according to law in the Maplewood South Orange News Record, and a hearing to be held on December 21st, 2021.
I second the motion.
Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lambrecht,
Yes.
Mayor McGehee.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We have our third ordinance on introduction.
Yes, Mayor. Ordinance number 3049-21, amend chapter 257 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Vehicles and Traffic.
We will get a motion here from Mr. DeLuca.
Thank you. And this motion is for handicap space.
Yes, and Fred, yeah, we basically, we had a request from the resident who has difficulty getting in and out of the car from their driveway. And the engineering department went out, took a look at it and made this recommendation.
Right. And we discussed it at Engineering Public Works and we concur. I move the passage of this ordinance on first reading, its publication according to law in the Maplewood South Orange News Record, and a hearing to be held on December 21st, 2021.
Second.
Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams,
I said yes. No?
Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lambrecht,
Yes.
Mayor McGehee.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We have our last ordinance on introduction.
Yes, Mayor. Last one on introduction, 3050-21. Direct the installation of a multi-way stop sign at Rucker Street, Field Road, and Newark Way.
May I get a motion, Mr. DeLuca?
I move the passage of this ordinance on first reading, its publication according to law in the Maplewood South Orange News Record, and a hearing to be held on December 21st, 2021.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams, Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lambrecht,
Yes.
Mayor McGehee.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. Okay, we'll now move on to agenda item number 14, which is reports from departments. Mr. Jimes, do we have any reports that you want to report on before we move on to administrative reports?
I have one quick item, and then I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Administrator Barnett to deliver a report from my office. First, I just want to bring your attention to an event that's going on that, although is not a Maplewood event, it's an event that's being organized by somebody from Maplewood, and that is me. So I currently serve on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee of the Rutgers Alumni Club of New York City. And we organized a roundtable of DEI leaders from the public and private sector. We're going to discuss their roles, and I think it would be a great value to anybody that is interested in attending. We have an excellent panel of diverse leaders from major corporations and Rutgers University itself. The event is virtual on December 15th at 7 p.m. via Zoom. It's free. You're all invited. Anybody from the public who is on is invited. To find out the Zoom links and the information, you can easily just search my name on LinkedIn, and it'll be something I posted on my profile. So I encourage you, if you have some time, it could provide some value to you in your lives outside of the township and the township as well. So proud to be a part of that subcommittee and the Rutgers Alumni Club as well. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Administrator Barnett, who will deliver a report on behalf of my office this evening.
James.
Hello, everyone. So just a few key things that we're focusing on this month. So one is the new website, which I know we've been talking about for a while. As Roger was mentioning earlier, we've switched over our agenda platform, and our new website is hosted through the same company. So that's Granicus. And so we're going to be able to integrate our agendas and our scheduling for our events directly into the website and just have a nice streamlined setup that makes it a little bit easier for people to find the information that they're looking for. And we've heard from residents that the current website isn't always the most intuitive to navigate. So that's something we're definitely hoping to address. And one feature that we're particularly excited about is the service finder feature that we're going to have at the top of the homepage. It just makes it really simple for people to kind of drag and drop, select what they're looking to find, and hopefully make that a lot more simplified of a process. And that will also integrate eventually our boards and committees data as well. That's something that Granicus is currently working on. But we actually got to see the beginnings of the live site. It's not fully functional yet, but the design's been put up and they're finishing transferring over our data right now. So we're looking at an official launch date sometime mid-January. So definitely before the end of January at the latest. We're really looking forward to that. Or sorry, mid-February at the latest. Definitely looking forward to that. And we're starting training next month. And another big project that we're working on, Candace hinted at it a little bit in the Board of Health meeting, is we're onboarding a crisis intervention social worker. So we're still in the hiring process for that, but we had a really strong meeting today with the Mental Health Alliance of Essex and Morris counties, and they're going to be partnering with us on that program and providing some supervisory support. And they've implemented similar programs in the past and are going to be acting as pseudo consultants for us, which will be great. And thanks to a generous donation from a Maplewood resident to them at one point in time, the first year where we're going to kind of do a trial period of this program is actually going to come at no cost to the township. So we're really excited about that, very thankful for that donation, and really excited to be moving forward with the Mental Health Alliance, and we'll be working out a formalized agreement sometime later this week. And then the other focus right now is on sustainable New Jersey renewal. So we're working on setting up our application plan for next year right now. We know it's early, but really want to hit the ground running and avoid any rushing or stress surrounding that, and definitely trying to get as many points possible and make sure Maplewood is as green and sustainable as it possibly can be, and implementing some new projects. And one of the meetings that we have coming up regarding sustainability within Maplewood is going to be focused on sustainable procurement, sustainable purchasing, and green purchasing. So there might be a resolution and or ordinance headed your way shortly, depending on how that conversation goes. But that's something that we're definitely looking into and following Sustainable Jersey's guidance on. And then the last thing is kind of a small update, but we have the Maplewood leaflet that is coming back. It is being published within the next week or so, and it's going to be available both digitally and in hard copy to residents who request it. So after a long hiatus, that is finally returning, and we're looking forward to getting into more regular quarterly publications.
Thank you, Ms. Barnett. Any questions for Ms. Barnett? Hearing none, thank you again. Very good report. And thank you, Mr. Jones, for your opportunity for us to join you on December 15th. We'll now hear from our Township Attorney, Mr. Desiderio.
Mayor, I just have one item on the agenda. 18H on the consent agenda is a resolution to extend the contract or modify the contract with Sustainable Essex Alliance and Smart Power. And I circulated a copy of the contract. There was one request by Smart Power, not with regard to the amount of the payment, but with regard to the manner of payment. They asked for a first payment of $10,000 to be made upon the signing of the agreement, and the additional $5,000 thereafter. Ms. De Palma has okayed that. I've also checked with our CFO, and he's okayed it. So when you pass that resolution, it would be with regard to the change that I just mentioned, which I will circulate. Otherwise, the resolution and the contract were acceptable to all parties.
Thank you, Mr. Desiderio. And to be clear, we're saying 10, not 15. Is that correct? Is that what we're saying?
No. We're paying them 15.
Okay.
We're paying them 15, but as opposed to paying them on an hourly basis, they've asked for $10,000 up front because of work they've already done, and then the additional $5,000 thereafter.
Understood. Thank you for that clarification. All right. See you there.
And that's all I have.
Any questions from Mr. Desiderio? All right. Hearing none, we'll move on and hear from our Township Clerk, Ms. Fritzen.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to report that the January 1st annual reorganization meeting of the Maplewood Township Committee, because it is a Saturday, is at 1 p.m. instead of 12 noon. So 1 p.m. Mother item is just a follow-up that annually I send out questionnaires to all of our board and committee members who have an expiration of 12/31 of the current year, to ask them if they are interested in being considered for reappointment. And at the same time, we also send out a questionnaire to our chair people of each volunteer board and committee as to what the participation level is of their members. So those are rolling in. And most of them are been coming in the last couple of weeks, so pretty swiftly. Mother item is just to say that beginning the 15th of December, we're going to be making parking jitney combos, the renewals for 2022 available. And if you did purchase one even as early as the 15th, it would be available on the spot to be used for 2022. And, at the same time, we review all of our overnight parking lots that we manage, township lots, and those residents, the 12 or 15 homes in town that are eligible for on-street overnight parking. And that's my report.
Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. Do we have any questions for Ms. Fritzen? Hearing none. Thanks again, Ms. Fritzen.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to reports from elected officials. We'll first hear from Ms. Adams.
Thanks, Mayor. And Mayor, you used to mix this up a little bit, but with this new agenda, I'm always first again. It's like voting, just because
they said it for me. I like to mix it up, but
I know it's more fun. Then you can tell if we're paying attention. Oh well. So I just have a couple things. First, kudos to everyone involved in recreation and Village Alliance and Springfield Avenue Partnership and all the different lightings and of trees and menorahs this past week. They were plentiful, and but it was a lot of fun. Just two things from a couple of committees. The Zero Waste Subcommittee met again today to go over trying to get everything, develop the bid and the bid specs to go out. We'll have a draft of that probably mid-January. Alan Malgeri from the purchasing agent and tax assessor in South Orange is working on authoring that as a joint bid package to go out for garbage and recycling for starting 2023. But it's quite a lift. So we'll see what comes back. It's kind of complex. But the other thing is just the Environmental Advisory Committee continues to work on the environmental inventory assessment for the town. And hopefully that'll get included in the master plan with regard to climate change provisions for our master plan. That's all I have.
thank you, Ms. Adams. All right, so we'll now hear from Mr. DeLuca. I had to look because I like to mix it up, but I have it over here. So.
So I just have one item, and that is this Saturday from noon to 12. From 9 to noon, we're doing the Hilton Neighborhood Association is doing a food drive at the St. Joseph's Food Pantry, which is at 245 Hilton Avenue. So please bring your non-perishable goods. Again, Saturday, December 12th, from 9 a.m. to noon. And that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. We'll now hear from Mr. Limbert.
Thank you, Mr. McGehee. I have two items. The first of which is short, and that's that the Public Safety Committee meeting. The Public Safety Committee is meeting tomorrow night at 7:30 p.m. on Zoom. So that's the last opportunity in 2021 for the public to hear about what's going on in our police department and our fire department. It will also be my last meeting as chair of that committee. Again, that's 7:30 p.m. on Zoom, and the link is available on the Township website. My second item will be a little bit longer, and I think all of you probably knew you weren't gonna see me finish my term without one last speech on state aid. And unfortunately, a recent decision, I really feel compelled to speak out against. And it brings me no joy to criticize the Biden administration or to condemn the Department of Education, but a recent decision from that federal agency is very unfortunate and unfair for our school district and many other overtaxed and underrated school communities around New Jersey. Last week, the DOE ordered the state of New Jersey to restore $173 million to 80 overrated school districts in New Jersey, and more than $120 million of that aid is going to go to Jersey City alone. The state is now mandated to use American Rescue Plan funds to ensure that districts receive at least the same amount of funding in fiscal years 2022 and 2023 as provided in fiscal year 2019. And fiscal year 2019 was the last fiscal year before the important reforms, school funding reform laws that were passed in 2018 went into effect. And this decision undoes the important and logical adjustments that our state has made over the past several years to more fairly distribute the available state aid following our landmark school funding reform laws that were passed back in 2018 and that many of us so strongly advocated for and that our representatives in Trenton fought for and voted for. These changes that we made back in 2018 were carefully considered by our state representatives and have resulted over the past couple of years in much needed substantial increases in aid allocations to the South Orange Maplewood School District. While the Department of Education's basis for restoring this aid to the 80 overrated districts is that many of these districts whose state funding was reduced in the last few years have high poverty rates, including high levels of students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. Many of these communities also have very strong residential and/or commercial bases to draw from, tax bases, and have not fully funded their local fair share under the state formula, whereas most communities in New Jersey, including ours, fund far above our fair share. The Department of Education's decision also suspends the future redistribution of adjustment aid for at least 2 years, which will reduce any potential increases in state aid for our school district. And it will not only impact overtaxed and underrated exurban and suburban districts like ours, but will also adversely impact high-need urban districts like Newark, Patterson, Trenton, Woodbridge. The DOE's decision and directive also ignore the fact that our state aid's distribution is and has been severely underfunded, well below the state's own formula. For the current school year, the South Orange Maplewood School District is underfunded by over $2.2 million, and we're just one of over 370 school districts around the state that's underrated by a total of $1.2 billion. Meanwhile, there are approximately 200 districts in the state that are overrated, receiving a total of more than $360 million more in state aid than they would be entitled to under the formula. And the changes that we made in 2018 and that started taking in effect in the last couple of years, we're saying, rather than adjusting the aid to give above the formula to some districts while underfunding most districts, let's start adjusting that for a more equitable distribution. The Department of Education's decision is myopic. It undermines the ability of our state to provide full and equitable funding to every school district in New Jersey. It unwinds the important and hard-fought progress toward fairness that we made following the state education funding disasters under former Governor Christie. The reforms we had made to correct longstanding inequities that penalize districts with growing enrollment or increased need and that continued to reward districts whose enrollment had decreased or whose tax bases had grown, rewarding them with excess aid. This decision could put funding for many school districts, necessary funding for these districts at risk, including vulnerable districts like our neighbors in Newark, and also at a time when our teachers in the South Orange Maplewood School District need and deserve a new contract. We are at the risk of seeing our state aid reduced, or at least not seeing the increases in state aid that we were expecting to be able to fund to keep the teachers, the staff, the programs and the facilities that the students in our community need and deserve, and frankly, that our taxpayers more than pay for. So there's nothing that we can immediately, as a township committee, do. This is a federal decision, but I am starting to reach out to our state legislative representatives in the short time I have left to see maybe what we can do to lobby against this, or to at least ensure that this is something that is not something that we have to deal with in the long term. And I really hope that working with our colleagues on the South Orange Board of Trustees, on the South Orange Maplewood Board of Education, and other similar communities in Essex County and around the state, that the Maplewood Township Committee will continue to take a leadership role in fighting for equitable state aid for our school district and for other communities like ours. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Limbrick. Hear, hear. I would like to hear now from Mr. Daffis.
Thank you, Mayor. Fortunately for everyone, because I tend to give long reports because I tend to be doing a lot. Very active Township Committee member. Assistant Township Administrator Barnett covered a couple of my items, and I reserve the rest of my time with the remaining item that we have on our discussion agenda. Like Ms. Adams, however, I also want to salute our Community Services Department and our Special Improvement Districts in their fulsome and wonderful holiday events, from tree lightings and menorah lightings and holiday markets, which really created a very, very vibrant, is what I hear from our merchants from all over town, vibrant shop local campaign this holiday season. I know I was out there eating and shopping a lot the past couple of weeks, and it was wonderful in particular to attend some of these community events for the first time in a long time in person, and to see our youth and the joy in their faces. It really gave me new life. It really did. And I'd like to see us get out of this pandemic, but I also like to see that some things are returning to normal. And that makes me very, very happy for all of us, for the community at large. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Daffis. I'll just third what everyone said. The menorah lightings, as well as our holiday tree lightings, four of them in the last, I guess it was 4 or 5 days, were excellent, well attended, really great family affairs. We talked about the rededication with our menorah lightings and what it meant to rededicate to family and to loved ones and being together and to self. And the tree lighting was beautiful, about hope and happiness and family. So just really to all the rabbis that came out, Rabbi Klein, Rabbi True, Rabbi Jesse, all our rabbis, a wonderful thing. And since we're talking about, rededication and giving, let's not forget that our community fridge and work by Mr. Davis and team is still there. So the fridge is still there. So don't forget to, to stock it up for this holiday season, so deserving families can have something there. I just want to give a shout out to Ms. Wallace, Nicole Wallace, who's our manager of the Springfield Avenue Partnership. She's doing a great job. There's a survey out there regarding to our funding that we received. And so if you haven't had a chance to fill the survey out, it's still out there. Please take a moment to fill out that survey. It's very important for all of us. And then really quick, I just want to give a quick update regarding the Rothway River project. I mentioned before that the next step now is for the mayors to reconvene in the coming weeks. And we're hoping to meet with the Army Corps of Engineers and also the state of New Jersey to restart the evaluation and to find a solution. This has been the chicken and egg for quite some time. There's been, I think, 4 potential solutions in terms of the Orange Reservoir, dredging that. There's been conversations about a bypass project related to the Orange Reservoir. We've talked about also the construction, although I don't think it'll happen, with Army Corps of Engineers of a reservoir there. And then also the reconfiguration of the Campbell Mills, Mill Pond reconfiguration. But I don't think that's going to happen because I think Milburn has great concerns. So hopefully at the next meeting, after we meet, I'll have a report on what the next directions will be in regards to the Rothway River project. And then finally, really quickly, I'll share my screen for a hot second. We got a great jazz event coming here on Friday, December 17th. You can buy tickets at smoothjazznj.com. But we know we had Gil Paris and Bernie Williams come out in October, a wonderful event. And now we're having holidays with Marlon Meadows and Alex Bergeron. So if you can come out, it'll be a wonderful event. We'd love to see you out there. So please do try to come out if you can. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen if I can. And can I stop sharing my screen? Stop. And I will open the floor now. Okay, awesome. And we will move forward with our agenda. And we are now at agenda item number 17, which is our discussion items. And we have only one item for discussion. So I'll yield the floor to Mr. Baffert.
Thanks, Mayor. This is sort of a return to a discussion we had exactly a year ago when I brought this topic up to put us all on warning that our GRATA funding for this important age-friendly initiative was ending at the end of this year, and to start planning for carrying this burden forward between the 2 towns as a shared service. I recall at the time that our discussion was very positive and unanimous in support of carrying this forward. So here we are. GRATA funding has ended or ends at the end of the month. As some of you know as well, our Maplewood side coordinator is leaving us to attend to some family health issues that she has to attend to. So we are also in the process of hiring a Maplewood side coordinator. I believe Mr. Jimes is speaking to South Orange administration about the logistics of carrying this forward as a shared service. And I wanted to check in with the Township Committee and get your support so that Mr. Jimes can carry on accordingly.
Any discussion? I think we're good. Oh, wait, Mr. DeLuca, there we go.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, we went into this many years ago with the expectation that when the private funding stopped, we would continue this with our public funding. I think we were looking to do it more as a shared program, and if that's where we're going, I think that would be great. I was a little, we sort of now have 2 different coordinators. We were talking about 1 coordinator, but I don't know where we're going. But in any event, it should be a continued with public funding. That was our agreement with GRATA.
Right. I think the proposal is to carry on with 2 coordinators because the community has responded really favorably to that having 2 coordinators work with their respective administrations, which are slightly different in process. South Orange as compared to Maplewood, that seems to work out from the administrative perspective. And the community in each town also appreciates that and values that. So the proposal is to carry on with 2 coordinators and to still have the management committee intact in terms of supervision and ongoing coordination throughout the year in terms of programming, budget, and events. Mr. Jimes, did you want to chime in here?
No, I think you covered it based on our meeting we had the other last week. Adam and I, Mr. Lohner and I from South Orange will get together. We'll come up with an agreement for the Township Committee to review and we'll move forward with the project. I think just in my brief time here, the last several months, it's been a good project. Everybody works well together, and the ad is, I think, just recently updated and approved by some of the members who were looking at it and reviewing it. So I just got that within the last day or so. And well, as I said in that meeting, I'll be posting that immediately.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Jimes, and thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Dafis. That concludes our discussion items for this evening. We're now on agenda item 18, which is our consent agenda, and I'm looking for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move items 18A through 18X on the consent agenda, including resolutions 342-21 through 351-21, resolutions 354-21 through 366-21, the regular session meeting minutes of July 6, 2021, and the closed session minutes of November 15, 2021. And I'll note that item 18H, resolution 349-21, is as amended, as noted by Ms. Desiderio.
I get a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams,
Yes. Am I too fast?
Yes, you're too fast. Yes, Mr. Dafis votes yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lambert,
Yes.
Mayor McGehee.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We're now on agenda item number 19, which is public comment on any subject matter. Ms. Barnett, do we have anyone who would like to address the Township Committee?
I see no hands.
Outstanding. Seeing no one, we'll close our second public comment. And now we're on agenda item number 20. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Good night. And I'll
So-
take for some hold on here. Yes,
Okay.
exactly. We will now conclude the Township Committee meeting and say good night to our clerk, our assistant administrator, our attorney, and our administrators.